Ruskin Bond, sir, it's an absolute joy and a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for your time. Um, I must confess that I'm a fan of yours. I've read all your books. So when I wanted to start a series of interviews, yours being the first, uh, I thought that I must go to a person who is part of my early memories. I have never really met you so often in my early years. I met you only recently, but your books are part of my early memories. That's why I'm here.
Well, thank you, and it's nice to know that they've meant something to you and that you've enjoyed them over the years.
Thank you so much.
Because they do go back a long time,
Yes.
some of them, though I'm still writing and producing new stories, non-fiction too, occasionally some poetry, something of everything,
Right.
because I enjoy writing. And hopefully I can keep on writing uh, without anything to stop me till I stop.
Well, we look forward to your future books. I've read all your books that have appeared so far and read many of them many times over. There's one thing that strikes me is your optimism that comes out very clearly in your writing. That even in midst of a crisis, even if it's a crisis created in a story, there's something positive you see somewhere. There's something very grim, but there's something good that comes out of the story,
Yes.
and finally everything is fine. So, how have you arrived at this equanimity?
Well, it's strange you say that because only the other day I was thinking that in many ways I'm a pessimistic person. And sometimes but when I start writing, the, the pessimism seems to disappear and I become optimistic. So I think it's the very process of writing changes my mood or outlook in some indefinable way. Mm. And I gradually become a more cheerful sort of person. Otherwise, there are times when I'm not writing or reading, when I, I won't say depressed, but I might feel a little, down in the dumps. But so I think it's maybe just words, not just my own writing. I mean, I enjoy reading. I've always been a bookworm. So books, reading the written word, perhaps that in itself uplifts me and brings out the optimism in me. Um, so, in a way, I benefit from my own writing maybe more than the reader does.
Right. There's something you've written in your autobiography that something to the effect that when all the wars have ended, the birds will still sing.
Yes,
So
yes. When all the wars are done, a butterfly will still be beautiful.
yes,
Yes, or words to that effect.
yes,
And that's true. I think also being a nature person, over the years, I've come closer to nature, the natural world. Perhaps it's partly because I'm living in the hills
right,
has done it. So I've also been able to find some sort of um, solace or comfort, you might say, in the world, in the world around me, in the natural world. In trees, flowers, birds, and mountains and streams, and the world that is accessible if you are in the hills, and which is not so easy maybe to come by if you're living in the large urban areas, in the
right,
plains.
right.
Um, so maybe that's helped me a lot, and it's uh, over the years become more and more a part of my writing and my work. Um, Nature and the natural surroundings around us. So in a way, you could almost say it's almost a religion with me. The natural world.
Right.
And my relationship with it. Because it's something permanent, it's there.
Hmm.
As I say,
Uh,
men come and go, but the mountains remain.
of course, yes.
Even the mountains might move a little from time to time,
Right.
but not to such an extent.
Yes, yes,
Um,
absolutely.
mm,
I remember reading in a book of yours that there's various ways of dealing with a heartbreak, but one way is to go on a trek,
Hmm.
or one way is to see a bear fall from a plum tree.
Yes.
So, how do you find simple solution of a problem which would appear to be very big? Like breaking heart is something we've all been through,
Yes.
and I'm sure it's not easy to find a solution in a long trek.
No, no, it isn't, I guess. It's maybe the trek is a form of escape in a way. And of course, I don't trek anymore. I've passed the age when I could go climbing mountains or going on long treks. It's difficult getting up and down my steps,
Right.
which are probably the worst in Missouri. But I think it's not so much the trek. It's maybe with the passage of time, sometimes problems resolve themselves. And if you're patient, all things come to those who are patient, I feel.
True.
And so you got to sort of sometimes wait a little for things to change. You know, there are times in life when everything seems to go wrong all at once. So you just got to wait, I think, sometimes, and give things a chance to subside. The problems to subside, and hope for a little help from the Almighty if He's interested. And so I think you need perhaps patience, and then of course you have to. Um, it's good if you have someone to talk to, if you have a good friends or um, someone to whom you can confide one's problems. Books help, of course. Writing always does. Other people's great works. Um, you can't run away, of course, from problems or difficulties. So you got to perhaps meet them with as much equanimity and philosophy as you can. So some people don't worry that much. Can take things in their stride. It depends on your nature. I am the worrying kind. Little things bother me. But then that's always been the case. So uh, things. But I think I've found that uh, if one is patient and life sort of the cycle changes again. The bad period passes and the good period comes. It's sort of rhythm. There's a sort of rhythm in life, which as Shakespeare said, when the tide comes in, uh, that's the time to do what you have to do, and don't wait for it to go out.
Right. Something very interesting I read in a book of yours, that within you, sensuality and intelligence have been at war with each other. Sensuality and intelligence have been at war at each other, with each other within you. So finally, what quality or what attribute wins? What wins and what loses?
That's very interesting. Sensuality and intelligence, they are at war, and I guess with most people. And I've over the years, I think when I was younger, one has given into sensuality has perhaps has taken over. That's because I have a sensual nature. Some people have a sensual nature, and I don't think you can repress one's sensuality. Um, it's there. You have to perhaps guide it so that it doesn't lead you into trouble. Um, but I don't think one should suppress it. So um, because even one's writing, my writing, it at times is also sensual. So I allow it to come through in my writing, that sensuality. And so I guess I've also through life have followed my instincts to a great extent, and sometimes done something which an intelligent person wouldn't have done. Purely say when I went to off after finishing school, and my mother sent me off to England. And but for the 2 or 3 years I was there, I was always restless and wanted to come back to India. Although I was told, "Don't come back, Ruskin. You won't. There's no job. You're not qualified. You won't get a job here, and you're not going to make a living as a writer here in India. You have a job in London. You have a future there. Stay there. Don't come back." But I ignored everybody's advice and purely followed my own instinct and sensual nature, and just followed my longing to, and as I've always done, and always tried to live the life I've wanted to live. Um, if that meant sacrificing security, let's say, basically security was something I was always ready to do away with. Maybe you need it more when you get older. Fortunately, things over the years have worked out well for me. Um, so I don't have my bank manager now telling me there's nothing left in your account, Ruskin, which was often the case many years back. But but so I've always followed my own nature, you can say.
Yeah.
And I think to be happy in life, you must uh, live with your own nature, and don't deny it. I think, or don't deny your sensuality or your physical needs as well as your mental needs. So I've always had as all the intellectual satisfaction that I could want, because I've read thousands of books and I keep reading 2 or 3 a week now. They're my main source of pleasure and entertainment. Writing, try every day to write a page or two. Maybe I'm not as prolific as I used to be, but I still get bursts of creative energy. And of course, I can't indulge my sensual nature physically as one could when we're younger. None of us can, I suppose, as we get older, which is a good thing. It means now you can rely more on your intelligence and not be plagued by the more the sensual aspects of life.
Absolutely, absolutely. We all go through various phases of life, and we all have our regrets. Would you have lived your life any differently, any which way than you did?
I doubt it. I'm not. I'm basically a person without many regrets. I think if I had to live my life all over again, I wouldn't mind living a similar sort of life. I mean, I would very much want to have the same friends and relationships, and I would still like to live my life in India, in this country, and I would still want to be a writer, whether a failed one or a successful one, but never doesn't matter as long as I could write. And again, because if my nature hasn't changed, I wouldn't. Perhaps the life I choose wouldn't change very much either, because it's a life where I like being on my own or do my own thing. I've never interfered much in other people's lives, and they haven't bothered me much either. So I've chosen my relationships, and like everyone, I've blundered along at times. But I think basically uh, I wouldn't. I would love to have know the same people and have the same friends and the same relationships and the same problems, but all over again, because nothing can go smoothly. But no, I think I've been lucky in a way, that I've been able to live this sort of life I wanted to live, and that I've made a living doing the thing that I love most, which is writing. and making a living from the written word in a way. So, so I got no regrets really. And here I am still around, enjoying enjoying the butterflies and the bees, and still writing and reading, and I have the companions and family that I chose for myself without being married, and so I've been done all the things that people told me I shouldn't do. Which
Would
means
you
I've
would you
been reasonably happy.
would you advise people to do that, to follow their instinct?
I don't give people advice because I've never taken it myself.
You've seen a lot change around you, the society. When you were growing up, the British Empire was still there. Then India became
Yeah, well,
independent.
India has changed over the years, and of course it has. Life has changed, and since I've also spent most of my life in in a certain area, I've seen that change happening. Over the years at close quarters, and my early childhood in Dehradun, um, with my grandparents, and it was just a small town of 40,000 people in 1947, and now it's 10, 15 lakhs. So the urban spread has been tremendous, and that reflects so many other towns and cities too. So villages have become towns, towns have become cities, and cities have become mega cities, and so all that brings in change.
Does that did you ever feel that things around you, the society around you, has changed beyond what you could cope with?
It changes subtly, in a subtle way, but not in a. People basically don't change. I mean, the politics might change, and the social scene, and we all become more technically minded and advanced in many ways. But basic human beings' emotions don't change. We still fall in love in the same way, uh, or or fall out of love, or we have same ambitions. We want to do well in life. Take a kid. Children don't change. I mean, what does a small boy of 5 or 6, you ask him, what does he want? He wants an ice cream, which would be the same.
Yes.
70, 80 years ago, that's what I wanted. When I was in Delhi with my father in 1942, and my main object in the course of the day was to walk across to the milk bar in Connaught Place and have ice creams or milkshakes.
Caventers.
Huh?
Caventers. Caventers was the name.
Yeah. At that time, the milk bar wasn't where the Caventers milk bar is now. It was on the outer circle opposite Scindia House.
Opposite Scindia House, right?
It was there. And we lived on a little lane called Atul Grove Lane.
Yes, the lane is still there.
It's still there, and it hasn't changed.
No.
At least I went there 5 or 6 years back. Ravi Singh was with me. And it's amazing that everywhere around it, everything had changed. But that little lane was exactly the same. The houses were the same, low bungalows. I think it was a telegraph colony.
Yes.
Telegraph. My father we just rented a part of a house there, a bungalow. And so I was then at that age 7 or 8 years old. I have a very good memory for my childhood. And so from Atul Grove, the same trees were there when we went after 50, 60 years. And so from there I could walk to Connaught Place easily.
All the cinema halls are still there.
They were all quite shiny and new then in the 1940s. They weren't very old. The Rivoli, the Regal, the Odeon, the Plaza. I remember them all. Yes, they were. And to see a Hindi film, you had to go to Kashmere Gate.
Oh, Ritz, yes.
Ritz also showed English language films occasionally. No, that was in Chandni Chowk. I saw The Thief of Baghdad.
Chandni Chowk. Okay.
Chandni Chowk.
Right.
Chandni Chowk had a cinema.
Right.
Huh?
Yes. It did
I
have.
don't know if it's still
I'm not
there.
sure about now, but
No.
it did. I think one time it did have.
But Kashmiri Gate was then still quite a busy part of Delhi.
Yes.
uh,
Yes, it was.
in the 40s. So I've seen Delhi change from my early childhood, 1940s. 42 was the Quit India movement. World War II was also on. My father was serving in the RAF, and I visited him for a year and a half in Delhi. No school at all. The best year of my life. No school. Then, because he was being transferred here, and he had to put me in boarding school.
Right.
And similar, Bishop Cotton. So those 2 years in Delhi are very memorable. And then when I later on, of course, how Delhi changed when I came back in the 50s from England, and then all these new colonies had come up. The immigrants from West Punjab.
Yes.
And I found no longer staying in the capital area, but out in Rajouri Gardens or somewhere. So I've seen Delhi change. Now it's keeps spreading like an octopus,
Absolutely.
taking in parts of Haryana,
Yeah.
UP, everywhere else.
But some things are still the same. Like Hotel Maidens, for example, which
Maidens Hotel,
it is still there.
yes. I remember Maidens Hotel. Just to go there swimming. I didn't stay in the hotel, but then one could use the swimming pool. And back now, I'm talking about the 1960s. But Maidens was often people a bit puzzled to want to know why it's called Maidens Hotel. And hardly anyone knows that it's. You see, the man who founded it, who originally built it, his name is John Maiden.
I see.
He was John Maiden. It was called Maidens after
Okay.
him. So it had nothing to do with pretty girls or maidens roaming around.
Right. Okay.
But architecturally, it's a very beautiful building.
Yes. It still stands.
Yes, still stands. It's worth looking at.
Yes.
I did go there 3 or 4 years back. I went and had dinner there with one of my publishers, who were this Ratna Saga people. So I renewed my acquaintance with Maidens Hotel and Old Delhi. But of course, my very early childhood was in Jamnagar.
In Jamnagar, of course.
And that's changed, of course.
Yes.
That's now such a huge industrial center. Then it was just a tiny port, which was famous really because of the previous ruler Ranjit Singh Ji and his cricketing fame,
Yes.
and his nephew Duleep Singh Ji. I saw him playing cricket. I was a very small boy. The cricket didn't interest me much. I used to be taken to these matches, but because it was all those Maharajas, days of the Maharajas, so the trays would come laden with laddus and jalebis and barfis and things to eat. So my concentration was more on these sweets than on the cricket. But Jamnagar was in a way the home of Indian cricket.
Yes.
Even Vinu Mankad learnt his cricket there. And I think there's still Jadejas are from Jamnagar, that family.
I remember reading in a book of yours that you climbed up to, it was an attic or a room on the topmost floor,
yes,
and
there
it has
was an
colored
old-
window panes.
It was an old palace which had a turret going up. It's there in I still got old photographs of that time. And there was a room where all the glass, colored glass, all the windows
Yes,
had colored
yeah.
glass. So
So
I used to like looking through the different colored windows, and I later wrote a story about it, the room of many colors,
yes,
and an eccentric Rani who lived up there.
I took it very metaphorically, that in the sense that you have actually looked at life in multiple ways.
I suppose that's true.
So,
So I have a lot of memories of Jamnagar, although I was only 5 or 6 when we left. And then then again, when part of my childhood was in Dehradun,
Yes.
because my mother's parents were
Hmm.
settled there, Nana
Right.
and Nani. Um,
But
uh,
what? Sorry, please complete.
no, no. Father's was had grown up more in Calcutta.
Right.
And,
Hmm.
his father being in the army, an army man. So this, um,
You have a keen sense of history. I mean, not only for monuments but also for facts.
yes,
And a person who has a keen sense of history is also very. He is also very kind of mm, sensitive to the passage of time.
yes, you're true. That's true. Because you can compare the present with the past in a way, you know. Um, so I think history is important because you can help you to look back on how people lived, you know, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or and how the passage of history and all that has happened has um, resulted in what we are
Yes.
in many ways.
Yeah. Um, I read in a book of yours, in your autobiography, that you had gone to BBC in London to record a piece.
Yes,
And
a
outside
very
the studio, I think you recorded many pieces for BBC at that time.
yes. I did a few talks when I was in London. I was only 19 years old. There was a producer lady, Prudence Smith. She she got me to talk about my growing up in India, especially at that period of transition in the time of independence. Because I was 1947. I was 12 or 13. So sort of how I'd seen even as a boy things change and
Yeah.
what it was like to be a boy in changing India. And so, then later I did some of my short stories. They also broadcast,
Right.
and they used to have story programs in those
Yes.
days.
Yes. And then you mentioned that outside the studio you're waiting,
Mm.
and there was a gentleman next to you, and you indulged in some talk about weather
Yes,
or some,
yes.
and
Now,
and then later you realized it was Graham Greene.
yes, you see, in those days, a writer was known by his name and reputation, but not by his face, because we didn't have television, we didn't have the internet or all the visual media that we have now. So um, even well-known writers, they would come and broadcast or give talks, but of course you didn't see them because that was pre-television days too. Very often well-known writers like P.G. Wodehouse, you could meet him in the street, you wouldn't recognize him,
Yes.
and the same with Graham Greene.
Hmm.
So I was just waiting there to for my producer to be free, and this gentleman was sitting beside me, and just exchanged a few commonplace words, and then he went in to give his talk, and then my producer said, "Did you know who that was?" I said, "No." She said that was Graham Greene, and I'd
Right.
read a number of his books.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to talk about his books though.
Yeah. I mean, this is a question.
And that time he was at the peak of his fame. You see, they just filmed his story, The Third Man. It was running in the cinemas. Um, Even then, he wasn't, what you'd like. Today, he'd be a celebrity,
Yes.
as well-known writers are, because they're seen too. They become
Yes.
celebrities in a way.
There's a question which is often posed to you about how far are the characters real in your stories, and then you say that the most fictional is you yourself. You are the most fictional character in your stories,
Yes.
and but inadvertently, I mean, even without
Some
your knowing it, some bit of you would find a
some of the yeah, there's Rusty is a sort of alter ego.
yes,
I I often write in the first person narrative. Some of the stories are I've written written about real people, or introduced them into a story which might be story might be fiction, but the character might actually be
Might be real.
based on somebody I've known,
Right.
or of boyhood friends, or even or teachers or someone. But and so I might change them slightly. Um, and at the other hand, I've also invented a few. So it varies from some characters being based on real people um, to somewhat invented. But I think most writers do draw on people in real life to a great extent.
Yes.
When they create characters. I mean, you take Dickens, even Mr. Micawber is based on his own father, who was
Yes.
always in debt and then getting into trouble, and that was a very autobiographical novel of his. Mm. So very often it helps to create a character if you have someone in mind, or you can sort of picture that person, and sometimes it coincides with someone you've known.
Yes.
So it could be a character based on somebody, but who gets changed or gets fictionalized in the process of writing a story around him or her. For instance, I often write about my grandfather.
Yes.
And the various animals he kept. But my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, he died a year before I was born. So I'm writing about him from what my mother told me, or my grandmother told me, of what I've heard about him. So then I put myself into the stories about grandfather. So a lot of people thinking I really knew my grandfather very well, when I never actually we never saw each other.
You have mentioned in many places that when you ran out of relatives to write about, you started writing about ghosts. So
yes, when I ran out of fictional characters, I wrote about relatives.
Yeah.
And when I ran out of relatives, I think I started writing about animals. And then when I ran out of animals, then I wrote about ghosts.
And did you say somewhere, and I hope my memory serves me right, and a schoolgirl asked you, and you said you've seen a ghost, but you don't believe in it.
Yes, that's true. Somebody asked me, "Do you believe in ghosts, sir?" And I said, "No, I don't believe in ghosts, but I keep seeing them." And another little girl said, she was about same age, 8 or 9, I think. So I like your ghost stories, but can't you make them more frightening? She said, they're not scary enough. So you can't scare kids nowadays. I think they see too much television or too much frightening, scary films that I see sometimes scare me, but they don't scare kids.
So if you admitted seeing ghosts, is there somebody else in the room at this moment whom I can't see? Is there some ghost in the room at the moment that you can see and I can't?
No, I have to confess that I've never seen a ghost, that I've never met a ghost, where I make them up.
Okay.
Well, a lot of my early reading, I used to enjoy reading ghost stories. So as I go along, I said I must also write the occasional ghost story and try to make them as convincing as possible. And my ghosts are not scary. That's true. They're usually quite helpful and nice ghosts.
Yes, of course. I would like to end with a very optimistic
There is
quote.
a ghost actually stays up here in this.
Oh, I see. But of course,
in the attic.
Not visible to the camera. Not visible to the camera or to us.
No, it's an invisible ghost. You hear it at night sometimes.
I see. So we must come at night and do an interview of yours and that ghost.
Record the ghost.
Record the ghost. Of course, yes. There's something you write in your autobiography which I find very, very soothing, especially when one is, if and when one passes through dark times. Then I find this line very, very soothing. Future is too unpredictable for anxiety.
The future is too?
Future is too unpredictable for anxiety. So so this is right from your autobiography.
Yes.
And
yes, that's true. It means there's no point in getting worried or over.
Yes.
you can't help worrying or being anxious, but as you said, you can't do much about it sometimes. So you
Right.
might as well just shrug it off and get along with living.
True. And on that note, I mean, we could talk for many hours, but your time is precious.
Thank you. You made
So,
me talk,
and
and I'm
so
not much of a talker usually.
it was absolute privilege and a joy to talk to you. We
That-
wish you long years and long.
Whenever I have a record for the shortest speech ever given, which is about 2 minutes, whenever people ask me to talk in public, I clam up.
So we look forward to many more books,
Thank
many
you.
more ghost stories, and many more optimistic stories. And thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time.
My pleasure. Good.